Some of us have grown up with the phrase, turn the other cheek. And sometimes that gets misunderstood for staying in an emotionally, verbally, or physical abusive relationship and just keep taking it. What if I told you that according to scripture and the way Jesus actually lived, there's more to it? So today we're going to talk about what Jesus really did when faced with verbal attacks, manipulation, rejection, constant criticism, and how we can follow his example of how we can protect our heart, guard our peace, and still walk in love. We're going to go through about 5 patterns that we see in scripture of how Jesus modeled what to do in abusive situations. So, one disclaimer I have to put onto the table is if you are in an abusive relationship, verbal, emotional, or physical, please seek professional help from therapist, pastor, someone you trust. Okay? Because we want you to be safe and healthy. Okay? Turning the other cheek is found in Matthew 5:38-39. Let's read that together. Matthew 5:38-39. Have you heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth? But I tell you, don't resist an evildoer. On the contrary, if anyone slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. Number 1, Jesus named the wrongdoing. He called out the wrong without yelling or retaliating. So he is going to point to and pull out the truth. When slapped by an officer, Jesus calmly said, if I said something wrong, testify to what is wrong. If I spoke the truth, then why did you strike me? This is found in John 18:19-23. This is after Judas' betrayal. Jesus was arrested. He's in front of the high priest, and an officer came and slapped him after he spoke. So let's read that together. John 18:19-23. Inside, the high priest began asking Jesus about his followers and what he had been teaching them. Jesus replied, everyone knows what I teach. I have preached regularly in the synagogues and the temple, where the people gather. I have not spoken in secret. Why are you asking me this question? Ask those who heard me. They know what I said. Then one of the temple guards standing nearby slapped Jesus across the face. Is that the way to answer the high priest? He demanded. Jesus replied, if I said anything wrong, you must prove it. But if I'm speaking the truth, why are you beating me? In verse 20, he says, I always taught in synagogues or at the temple where all Jews come together. I said nothing in secret. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. So he is pointing out the truth, and he has other people that can testify to that. So this is what we're focusing on in this video, is the actual behavior that happened. He was struck, and he is questioning why. Now, if you go back to eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, or turning the other cheek, he's not saying nothing and turning the other cheek, okay? He is not retaliating with a strike, all right? And he is not silent and being passive. He is standing up for truth. Okay, so that's point number one. That is something really great to model after. All right, first, pull out the truth, because sometimes in our situations, we can get very muddy with what we say and how we feel. Now, what is actually happening is the strike. So the strike can be words. It can be withholding fruits of the Spirit, love, peace, understanding. Okay. So number two, Jesus removed himself from unsafe situation. Luke 4:28-30. Let's read that together. Luke 4:28-30. When they heard this, the people in the synagogue were furious. Jumping up, they mobbed him and forced him to the edge of the hill on which the town was built. They intended to push him over the cliff, but he passed right through the crowd and went on his way. When the crowd tried to kill him, he walked right through the crowd and went on his way. So he's in a very hostile situation, okay? And he is walking straight through and getting out of there. Walking away is not weakness, it's wisdom. So, again, turning the other cheek, you're not retaliating and doing the same pattern back. And removing yourself from unsafe situations is not weakness. Now, personally, I grew up not knowing how to do this because I wanted the problems to be solved. So I stood my ground and I pursued resolve and I did not walk away. And these are behaviors that conditioned me and the choices I made to continuously get walked on because I didn't walk away. And I wanted to fashion my situation in a way that there could be peace as an outcome, but it wasn't the healthiest way of doing it. Sometimes walking away is going to be the best decision possible in that situation so that you can guard your heart, protect your peace, and still walk in love because you're stopping something that is probably going to escalate and continue to hurt. So you can actually just stop it or speak in love to say, we can come back later. That's where boundaries come in, right? We can come back later to this conversation when we've simmered down a bit and this behavior is unacceptable. All right. So removing yourself from unsafe situations. Number 3, Jesus didn't entrust himself to unsafe people. This is in John 2:24-25. Let's read that together. John 2:24-25. But Jesus didn't trust them because he knew all about people. No one needed to tell him about human nature, for he knew what was in each person's heart. Jesus would not entrust himself to them, for he knew what was in each person. Love doesn't mean full access. He guarded his inner circle. Okay, so boundaries allow you to have an invisible line, and that line is where your circle ends and someone else's begins. And that line is going to protect you from harm. Okay? So you're not going to give access to someone that is a threat or is going to hurt you. And Jesus knew what was in these people, so He was not going to put himself in that situation. I know it's easier said than done, especially when we're in it, when we're in a relationship and we need to be applying all of these tools to have success. It's not something that is a one-tool solution, okay? This is something that we are growing and learning to strengthen ourselves to be healthy, all right? So in our podcast collections, we have understanding how to navigate through burnout, overwhelm, and stress. And this podcast is about setting boundaries. So we're not going to trust our whole selves with unsafe people. Number 4, Jesus responded without retaliation. Number 1, we talked about retaliation, but number 1 was focused more on truth, speaking truth. So number 4, Jesus responded without retaliation. 1 Peter 2:23 is the scripture for this point. Let's read it together. 1 Peter 2:23. He did not retaliate when he was insulted, nor threaten revenge when he suffered. He left his case in the hands of God, who always judges fairly. When they hurled insults at him, he did not retaliate. He kept his integrity, refusing to enter the abuser's cycle. Okay? So when you have two people and you're getting an escalation of energy or charged emotion, then you're responsible for your self-control. And if someone begins to start their pattern of abuse, then we are not going to match their energy, and we are not going to treat them in the same way that they are treating us. It is not going to help. The second that you raise your voice or begin to show uncontrolled emotion, we've lost, because they can use that against us to say, look at what you're doing. You're not helping. This is what you're doing. This is the behavior that's happening. And that's just a ticket for them to continue the abusive cycle and have something to make it worse and to get further away from helping you, right? Or coming to a resolve. So he kept his integrity, okay? Having self-control, sticking to the truth, and creating boundaries is going to keep your integrity, and boundaries also formulate how someone else is going to treat you, what is okay and what is not okay, because we would like to stand for self-respect, dignity, and that we are meant to be loved and to be able to give love. Okay. Number 5, Jesus confronted hypocrisy. So Matthew 23 is the scripture for this point. Let's read it together. Matthew 23:12-13. But those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! For you shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You won't go in yourselves, and you don't let others enter either. So Jesus here openly rebuked the Pharisees for manipulation and deceit. Truth-telling is not unloving, it's freeing. So, if you're going to call out truth, manipulation, hypocrisy, which is basically them saying one thing and doing another, you are right to do so because they have to deal with that behavior themselves and sit in that. Because when we put a boundary up and say, this is not okay with me, this is the truth, this is what is happening, it is not unloving. It is freeing because we are not allowing an abusive cycle. If today's episode brought clarity and peace, please give it a subscribe and share it with someone who might need this as well. They might need to hear that Jesus calls us to boundaries, not bondage. Your soul food encouragement for today. Remember that when you follow Jesus' example, you don't just protect yourself, you show others a healthier way to live and love. Thank you for joining us at the Growth Table Co. Thank you for coming from where you are, just as you are. See you in the next one.